Welcome everybody to the first of hopefully many private practice section student special interest group interviews. We're hoping to fire off a line of interviews that have a private practice focus and in attempts to bring light to the private practice area of physical therapy. It's been recognized by professionals and students that business and private practice is an area that's lacking in entry-level education. So as a student effort by the Student Special Interest Group, we're hoping to create more opportunities for learning experience by reaching out to those who are actually doing it. So my name is TJ. I am the Private Practice Section Student Special Interest Group Vice President. And here with me is Trent Salo, our Director of Communications. And our guest of honor tonight is Eric Christensen of Chandler Physical Therapy in Chandler, Arizona.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So Eric is a graduate of Regis University. Like our soon-to-be, or our president, who is soon-to-be, Lauren Keeley, also goes to Regis University. He also graduated from Colorado State University with a degree in exercise science and a focus in sports medicine. In practice, Eric enjoys working with all populations of patients in orthopedics and in the neurological field. He specialized in custom orthotic prescription and casting, vestibular reprogramming, and manual therapy. In his practice, Eric takes a developmental approach to rehabilitation using the selective functional movement assessment. So a wide range of skills he brings to Chandler Physical Therapy. So we're excited to talk to him today and get a little bit of an idea of what his business sense is like and how he got involved and started Chandler Physical Therapy. So Eric, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about Chandler Physical Therapy and how it came to be?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you for having me, guys. It's really fun to be here. So I'm really proud of you guys for getting out there and actually doing this. It's definitely a huge movement that you guys have done, and I enjoy what you're doing. So kudos to you guys. Chandler Physical Therapy, my wife is also a physical therapist. She's the co-owner of this practice. She also went to Regis. And we had known we kind of wanted to do our own thing for a long time. And at the time, I was working in a private practice setting where the owner was actually based out of San Diego, but he had a couple satellite clinics out in Arizona. And actually, about 6 months, I became the clinic director over at the Chandler Clinic. And after a little while, he was not interested in staying in Arizona anymore. And so basically, he called me one day and offered me to buy out his clinic. And so, it was at the time we decided, why not? Let's try it and go for it. And so we took it to a new location. Luckily, we had a lot of the equipment there and actually an existing patient list, which might make us a little different than a lot of just straight-up startups, and kind of fired out from there. We took it from a one-therapist clinic to now we're supporting 3. So we built it with hopefully growth in mind, and we've definitely grown so far, which I've been pleased with. But it was just one of those things that kind of rolled in, and we do anything from like vertigo to a kid with Osgood-Schlatter's to semi or non-acute, I should say, stroke rehab. Anything that kind of walks through our doors. We're situated next to Intel, so we see a lot of kind of injuries and overuse injuries related to that, but we, if you can treat it with physical therapy and we have the skills, we pretty much see it every day.
That's great. I think one of the things that you touched upon. I mean, and you're fairly new out of school, so one of the things that we as students kind of run into in terms of when we approach private practice and when we approach the subject of business is, go out there, gain some experience, and then think about it in a few years or whatnot. It sounds like you went the unconventional route, and you and your wife started pretty early. So, is that true, or is that?
I was just 2 years out of school when we started it, and I am now almost 5 years out of school now. So, this coming March, we'll celebrate 3 years at this location. So, yeah, we were pretty fresh out of school. And I think that can have its benefits, maybe. And also, there's a lot I've learned in 3 years. So, for good and for bad, you roll with it and you take it as a life lesson. But, until you're exposed to it, you don't know.
Absolutely. And I think that it sounds like that opportunity to buy the clinic was pretty ideal. I think starting from the ground up is quite the task, but you know, I've heard really good things about falling into those positions where you can, you know, buy someone else's practice. And do you think that that was a was that a good move for you guys, or would you have started it from the bottom if you had to anyway?
I think eventually we would have started it from the bottom anyway. It wouldn't have been at the time that we did it. You know, this was something that just came along. And honestly, the owner at the time, you could tell he wasn't super interested in the clinic. You know, he wasn't checking in on it. We weren't getting kind of the requests we need met. It's obvious that he just wasn't in it anymore. And so from that standpoint, the clinic director that I had replaced was just, you know, they didn't have a meeting of the minds. Business was down, and so when I came in, we brought business back up, but the support for the marketing and what you needed to do to get further referrals in this time and place wasn't here. And so from that standpoint, I think we had a lot of growing to do. So that was kind of, you know, you're starting from the ground up from that standpoint. But having an existing client list, having people you could reach out to immediately, and walking in day one with patients on your schedule. And I think our first week we started off with 60 patient visits that week between two therapists. So not bad, you know, considering you're gonna get money rolling in fairly quickly. We're insurance based, so you know we have some cash based, but we're vastly insurance based. So you know it takes a while to get that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, just a couple questions. The first one, you know, we talk a lot of students that were not exposed as much to the business side of things in school. I think I have one business course in my curriculum. You know, where did your interest start? Did it start in PT school, and what did you do while in school to sort of develop that business sense or that knack or that knowledge? Was it reading books or speaking with people, reaching out to private practice owners? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, I guess in my view, I always knew that I kind of wanted to do it my way at some point. So the goal was always to open up my own clinic. You know, some people are very content being physical therapists under somebody else's clinic. That's not me. I kind of want to run my own show. So that was kind of always in the back of our mind. At Regis, they do have a business course, and I would say it prepares you as much as it could for the time and for the knowledge level. There are so many X factors when you walk out into the business world that are just, insurance is a nightmare. And I think from a new grad standpoint, I think that would be one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. Just contracting with insurance. And, you know, for us, like when we moved to this location, it took 9 months before we got fully contracted with Medicare. So all the Medicare patients we were seeing, we weren't getting paid for 9 months. So I think if you really are looking to go into a private practice setting, that's something you'll have to talk about. And realize that, you know, from the date of service, you're looking anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks on the positive side, and anywhere it could be 120 days before you see payment for that visit. So, you know, having that kind of working capital or the ability to sustain yourself for that long before you get paid if you choose to do insurance-based is going to be a huge factor. But the business project we did, I mean, we had to choose a location, we had to estimate a build out, we had to find out who our competition was, what our strategies were, what we wanted to base things on. And so it ran you through a lot of the steps, and we had to be very specific about it from that standpoint. But I think when you walk out into the real world, there are so many different variables that, you know, a class can't capture that accurately. I did a lot of my rotations at private practice. And so I did learn a lot more of the billing side and the business side from that. That was kind of one of my goals when I went into school. And so I did do a couple of that were private practice that I could. Obviously, I had to go a neuro and a skilled nursing facility as well. But that kind of stimulated me too and kind of fueled the fire a little bit. Did I answer your question there?
Yeah, absolutely. I receive a lot of inquiries from students of, you know, whether it's on social media or my colleagues or my classmates, you know, what can I do to get, you know, learn more about business side of things, and try to explain to them that it's not just understanding the marketing and billing, although that is important, but I think some of the principles of, you know, being in business or an entrepreneur of the marketing and the branding, et cetera, we talk about that a lot. And I think that's almost just as important as understanding those concepts, as
Absolutely.
well as understanding how to bill, how to, do those types of
Yeah.
things.
I mean, if you've got your billing down, you do not have to be a great therapist to be very successful in physical therapy. You just have to get people to care about you and want to come see you for whatever that is. I mean, obviously you want to be the best that you can be, but, the reality of the situation is people like to come to see you for you, not necessarily your skill at the end of the day. That's just a bonus.
Go ahead and, if you don't mind, just speak a little bit, coupling that. What sets your clinic apart? Then you talked about building a relationship with your patient, and you guys do a lot of different things over there. Can you just talk about what sets you guys apart from other clinics in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're husband and wife owned, so I think from that get-go, you have a passion there that maybe you don't find everywhere else. In Phoenix especially, and Arizona, you have these larger, I don't want to say chain physical therapy companies, but where they have 10 or 12 locations maybe, and so yes, they are privately owned, but the clinic directors may not have as much of a vested interest as we do, and so from that standpoint, what we earn is completely based on how we do with our patients and how we do with our business. And so I think from that standpoint, the drive is probably unmatched. We try and differentiate ourselves with skills. I use the SFMA, and that's not as popular out here. Obviously, I do dry needling, and that's getting very, very popular. But I think no matter what skill set you have, it's how you use it and how you're able to integrate it with the patient. And one of our big things that we really work on is educating the patient, making sure the patient knows, number one, who we are, but also, like who my family is, where I'm coming from, that I'm just a real person. I'm not just a robot who's treating you and cares about your back pain, Every day they're coming in, we're not only asking about them, how they're doing, but yeah, how's your sister, how's your daughter, We get a ton of referrals and we treat a lot of families, and so it fuels a lot of good conversations as far as, hey, how's so-and-so doing, how's your neighbor doing, you kind of develop this web, and from there I think those are the relationships that keep you in business and that are going to set you apart, and I feel like that sets us apart. I feel like we've got an incredible talent here. Danny, who's our new therapist, Danny Westergaard, he's incredibly skilled, great with his patients, caring. He's a biker and he's a runner. He does a lot of the endurance sports. My wife, she's got an excellent touch. She loves geriatrics, so we've got this diversity here that just, and when you walk into a place where people genuinely care about you and ask about how your day and who are excited to see you, I think that sets you apart, because when you come into physical therapy, it's not like you really want to be there. Maybe you're in pain. You might have things that you think are better to do, but if they walk away feeling satisfied, I think we do that really well.
That's really great. I think something that's been touched upon often in conversation, at least on Twitter, is that when new grads are going out looking for jobs, they're talking to people, or they're interviewing with people that are making an investment in their company. You don't want to hire somebody that doesn't have a vested interest in the job that they're applying for, and ultimately for the what the clinic stands for. So I think you guys are in a unique situation in that you said you both are vested in your business because you're both owners, and that creates a whole different dynamic than a lot of other clinics that have people that they're basically hiring to be there, and they don't have that vested interest. So I think that's pretty neat, and I think from some of the testimonials that I've read on your website and some of the things that I've read that people said about you guys, is it definitely shows. And I think that's something that students should definitely, or at least new grads, emerging students should think about, is that they're taking a part in someone's livelihood, their passion and someone else's passion. So it's definitely important. I think that's great.
Absolutely. And have you read Brains on Fire, or I think the other one's called The Passion Conversation, maybe? There's a group called Brains on Fire.
I haven't read it, no.
It's a phenomenal book, and it talks about how you don't want to market, you want to start a movement, basically. And I'd highly recommend it for you guys to read if you're at all interested in private practice. I assume since we're having this conversation, there's at least some level of interest. But it talks about, you've got to take advantage of the intangibles that you can bring to the table. Whether that's, bringing somebody coffee, who's had a bad day, or whether that's just, getting people to carry your movement through even if you weren't there, and how you do that and kind of how you set that up. And that's really a model that I've used for this clinic. And so I definitely would recommend checking that out as far as a read. Not that you don't have enough to read probably on your plate already, but
That's great. No, I think that's great. And do you have so you said you just hired someone new for your clinic?
he's been here about a year now.
Okay. In your interview process with your new employees, is that something that you look for? Is there a way that you screen for that? Is there something that you look for specifically in your new hires that kind of indicates that passion, or is it something that you kind of always have to take a gamble on?
Well, yes and no. I think, yes, you can kind of get someone's excitement for the position. And in your guys' case, you're out of school, you're ready to work, like you've been in school for years, you're ready to like let the world know who you are. So usually you see those new grads they're ready to get out there. They want that first paycheck because it's sweet. So there's always that excitement, but whether they mesh well, I think you do take a gamble a little bit on it. Now with Danny, who we hired, he was a student here, so I knew exactly how Danny was and his excitement and his drive, and so that is an ideal situation for me. I can tell you whether that student is going to be someone that's going to carry on, or if they're just someone who's just there to get that requirement, and maybe they don't care about this situation. But in a perfect world, that's how I'd bring all my therapists on. I like the thought of new grads. Not only do they have all these newer skills, at least all the new knowledge and things of that nature, but they also have excitement that you don't necessarily always find in people who've been in the field for a long period of time, who may have burned out, and maybe they are just looking to get that paycheck. Maybe they're just a W-2, but that's not who I want on my team. And that, we're lucky enough to be picky like that. Some of these bigger corporations, they just need people there, and maybe, they don't necessarily get that choice as much.
Right. Yeah. I think it's that definitely speaks to the, this could be a whole different topic, but just quickly to say that, there's a lot of talk too about clinical education reform, and, this is a great opportunity for practice owners to see, incorporate the students in their learning process in school and, get a sense of who they are, and then potentially develop a working relationship with that student. So, but again, that's a conversation that could, go on forever, and it's probably for another time, but
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible resource, and if you're really looking to get into private practice, I would say choose your clinical education well, and plan it out, and fight for those spots that you want to learn from, because that's really where you're going to hit the ground running. That's a real life experience. No amount of reading in a book about how Medicare bills, it changes every day, and it changes on the situation, when such and such arises, getting that experience is huge. So if you can get your foot in the door there and it's where you want to be at, you're in a much better spot.
Oh, that's some great advice, Eric. Now, could you talk a little bit about the work-life balance, maybe? We hear as students that being a business owner requires us to work 14 hours a day and sleep for 2 hours and get up and always thinking about business, which I think we inherently have as entrepreneurial-minded people. We're
Right.
constantly thinking about how we can improve. But at the end of the day, having a family and being married and things like that are also important to a lot of people. And just
Absolutely.
talk about how you have that work-life balance and what you do to promote that.
Yeah, my wife would say that my work-life balance continues to need work. It's very tough for me because, for me, physical therapy isn't just a job I go to. It's literally something I do for fun, too. I go home and I read physical therapy literature and stuff. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that is literally in me because it's something I love to do. And so on that, side effect, when I get home, I want to talk to my wife about, all these different things. And she's very good about separating. When she gets home, she can check out a little bit. So that's something, it is a struggle, and especially as your own business owner, because if you don't put in the time, no one else is going to. But now that once that first year, you put in a lot of work. I was working 7 to 7 quite a bit. You know, and you're treating what you need to treat to get patients in the door. Now that we're a little more established, we got a little better reputation, I'm not out there marketing nearly as much, you know, and I've been able to have, you know, my front office and my staff, they help me market too, and it's something that I can trust, that I can delegate to them. Because when you're marketing, you know, I feel that only I can really demonstrate what physical therapy does. But as we've gotten into this and, you know, what I can do with physical therapy, they understand it more and their passion's there too. So I'm a lot more comfortable kind of delegating that out a little bit more. And as you get into it and you get busier, you're going to have to start picking your roles and where you really want to do. And, you know, as a business owner, my true passion is treating patients. I don't necessarily love the administrative part of it. It's something I will do for, you know, what I want to do. But, you know, I never see myself working my way out of treating patients. And I know some people begin a business with that in mind. But it kind of, nice little segue there, getting back to the actual question. You know, when you get home, it took a lot of mindful, objective thinking to not pick up the computer and document and do that. I only do it when the kids are asleep, or I'll get up a little earlier and do it, you know, when they're asleep still and while I've got time. I've gotten, you know, the iPhone 5, or I think anything with the S behind it, you can do oral dictations into. So as I'm coming down, you know, when I'm driving home, I'll do all my dictation on the phone. So then I can just copy and paste it straight into my EHR when I get to the house or whenever I get back. So that saves me a lot of time, and I found a lot of different resources that way that can kind of save me time in that regard. But it is a constant battle, you know, and if I didn't have my wife, you know, keeping me in check, I could easily be at the business all the time, but it's constantly a struggle for sure.
Yeah, I think that's one of my major fears about, you know, breaking into private practice right out of school. It's just that, you know I have time, and you know, it's something that I foresee in my future eventually. But it's definitely, you know, I see myself struggling with time management in the clinic now, and I'm only a student, so I can only imagine what it's like when, you know, you have a wife, you have kids, you have all this other stuff hanging over your head, and I think that it's something that I guess eventually that you learn to manage and to handle. Like you said, it's something that comes with, it's not something that is innate in somebody. It's something that comes with time and actually doing it.
Well, yeah, from a time management standpoint, your first year out of school, you will see yourself change dramatically, I think. You know, it's just, it takes that getting your feet wet and into that. And to come straight out of school into your own practice, I do think it's possible, most definitely. But I think, like, you know, going back to the business course, unless you've really ingrained yourself in a private practice business that's willing to really work with a business model on you, coming into something, especially like a location maybe you haven't been, you know, you're moving from home, to understand who the major players are, what you need to do, what the population's like, those sorts of things. It's so different in reality than what you can read on paper. I think you really need to push yourself. And, you know, from a time management standpoint, maybe now's the time to do it. Maybe you don't have kids, maybe you don't have a house, you know, you may or may not be married, but you might have a little more free time to dedicate to that versus down the line. And that's something my wife and I kind of decided. We didn't have a kid yet. She was pregnant at the time. We had a kid, bought our house, and opened the business within a 3-month time span. And so that first year, there was not a lot of sleep happening, but for various reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thought, and good to hear it too. I think, you know, I think TJ and I are similar in our sense of wanting to maybe eventually own a private practice, and speaking with different people on the topic, we get different thoughts, different pieces of advice saying, no, you need to wait X amount of years and develop your skills before you open a private practice. And we've spoken with people that have opened a private practice pretty quickly and saying, you know, if you feel the time is right, go ahead and do it. It definitely is possible. So that's one of the things I struggle with as well as a private practice, you know, in the future is, you know, how soon do I do it, because I do want to have a family, and is that going to, you know, is it better to do it right away, although I want to develop and hone my skills first. So it's great to hear your story on how you developed that, how you went about it.
Yeah, and I fully support. I think you guys walk out of school nowadays with most of the school training that I've encountered with enough skills to be very successful as a practitioner. Not everybody has that business sense. And, I'm not familiar with your guys' business practices as far as what you learn in school, but I think you either know how to market yourself, and you can be a person that would sell water to a well, or you need to learn it, I think that was a rap lyric I just dropped. Dang. But it's, I think the skills set aside, like, you could be a very good physical therapist and an absolutely terrible business owner because you don't get out there and sell yourself. And I think, that is the skill that's hardest to learn, because I think as PTs, we don't like to talk about ourselves, and literally blow ourselves up, but you need to if you're gonna make a reputation. And a lot of times your results and your treatment will start to speak for themselves through other patients and other patients' referrals, but initially you got to be out there beating down the doors.
Definitely. Um, I wanted to touch upon, you spoke about earlier that your business is partially cash-based. So cash-based physical therapy is another kind of hot topic floating around right now. But you do accept insurance. So can you tell us a little bit more about, are there certain patients that are cash-based, or is it something that you decide to do at certain times, or is it just an option for patients?
Yeah, cash-based is always an option for patients if they want to do it, but most patients, if they carry insurance, they want to use it. And where I'm located at, we're in a pretty middle-class neighborhood. We have Intel next door, but we also have a lot of, lower-income neighborhoods not too far away. So we kind of see a lot of cross-sectional life coming through here. Not everybody can afford the cash pay prices. We're not unreasonably far away from the Paradise Valleys and the Scottsdales, where people have maybe the extra income that they can spend on this without having to go through insurance. But in my experience here, most people, if they carry insurance, they want to use their insurance. We do, I would say we probably have about a 5% cash pay, strictly cash pay, want to come in from day one and do cash pay. Now, certain insurances, they run out of, obviously, their benefits, and we always offer them the cash pay, benefits after that. And I've had lots of people take me up on that. Maybe it's not as frequent as they used to be. Maybe it's, only once a month or something like that. But we do have a lot of people taking that up as well. But, I can't remember who was talking about it, but, to start up a cash pay business, I think would be very beneficial, especially for someone coming straight out of school and wanting to start their own thing. Insurance is a nightmare. But, once you start accepting insurances, it's very hard to go back to a cash pay because people have the expectation that their insurance will cover it. So, I don't see us ever being dramatically cash pay at this location. We've kind of talked about expanding to a satellite location that's a much smaller size and possibly increasing, starting just cash pay only at that location and see how it does. But definitely a struggle, and deductibles are getting higher. People's, co-pays are getting higher, so people are starting to shop around a little bit more, and they're with, your flex spending accounts and your health savings accounts, they basically can do cash pay, but with some help from either their employer or their insurance, and I see a lot more of that coming down the pipe as well. And I think as this, Affordable Care Act rolls through, you're going to start seeing people really want possibly to go cash pay, because when you have a $6,000 deductible, you're going to be paying cash pay rates anyway until that's met.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the big things about, I see the benefits of cash pay in that I know exactly what I would be paying. I think when people deal with insurance companies, they're basically, they're throwing their money up in the air and just waiting to see how much falls onto the table, because you don't ever really, an outpatient is definitely different, in the hospital settings too. I've been learning a little bit more about that with the set rates and stuff like that, but there's no set numbers for anything, or at least if you can figure it out, if you can calculate that calculation, by the time you figure it out, you'll be healed and on to something else already. But I think one of the things that that I like about cash pay too is that it gives physical therapists an opportunity to market themselves too a little bit better and explain what it is that they're offering. It helps people understand the value of what they're actually receiving and where their money's going to and exactly how much they're paying for it. So I think it's good that I think it's great that you offer people that, and you know once their benefits do run out, that you always bring that up as another option for them to continue therapy.
Well, from a business standpoint, cash pay is easy. They pay you, it goes to your account. I don't have to send it to my biller. I don't have to wait for it to come back. It's clean. And so I prefer it, absolutely. But where I'm at location-wise right now, it's not a meth. We wouldn't be able to support ourselves on that alone right now.
Absolutely.
If I were to do this all over again from the ground up, I would start cash pay. I think, in my mind, it's one of the only ways to go, in an efficient manner. And then you can kind of pick and choose and add the plans that you want to do.
Right. And yeah, and like you said, too, people are shopping around now. The consumers are definitely a lot wiser than they were, a few years ago. So people are asking those questions now, like, how much am I actually paying for this? And they want to know those numbers. I had someone in the hospital the other day ask me how much they're paying for physical therapy service in the hospital, and it's, and that person was in their late 60s, so they're wising up, and we need to be equipped to answer those questions. So.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think it puts our profession in a great position because people are asking the questions, and I think they're getting informed and they're understanding who they should go to first when they have a musculoskeletal condition. So I think that puts us in a great position moving forward. Eric, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the future of private practice and where you see physical therapy fall within the healthcare realm.
Yeah, I see very good things for physical therapy. The good thing about physical therapy is that we're always going to be in fashion. People are always going to be out there. Injuries happen, and people are proactive if they're educated. And I think the chiropractic profession is an amazing example of that. People go there just for maintenance, and I think physical therapy has an amazing opportunity to become a very preventative side. And I think you're going to start to see insurance plans and people value prevention over reactive medicine. And that we are the profession to choose for that. We are movement experts. We are educated in referring out differential diagnosis. And so we can become this gateway for people to come in and say, hey, I've got this going on. What do you think? And, we have the ability to say, man, I don't think I'm the person for you. Go see X, Y, and Z. And I think that, we are underutilized so far. But I know a couple programs down in Tucson, they're now utilizing, physical therapists in the emergency rooms for differential diagnosis, and saying, hey, what's the risk of this being an ankle fracture? And, they're running off all the different stats and saying, let's try conservative therapy first. It reduces, healthcare dollars being spent, but it also increases our accessibility to that profession. So I think we've got an incredible potential, and just from students like you guys, I feel, and maybe I was just super ignorant in PT school, but the movement for private practice and the movement for the awareness of PT and all the solve PT and business PT is huge now, and it wasn't like that when I was in school, and so that's super exciting. You have a whole new wave of students that are super proactive, way more proactive, and I think you're just going to see this profession explode.
Definitely. I'm very confident in the future of physical therapy, and I know that, us students have had a lot of help from professional physical therapists such as yourself, and, all the ones that float around on Twitter, and, everyone that we meet at professional conferences have been super supportive of everything that we have been attempting to do and learn, and I think that's, the profession giving back to us, and I know I look forward to giving that to somebody else too, or to a new student eventually someday. So we have a great relationship, students and professionals right now, and I think you're right in that it's gonna be the difference, and it's gonna be the change that physical therapy probably needs in the future. So
absolutely.
We are kind of closing in on time. Trent, did you have any last questions that you wanted to ask, or I have a little?
lot of questions, but I'm good.
Okay. So before we go, kind of Eric, we're gonna blow your head up a little bit with some of the testimonials that are on your website. So I
Oh
think that
man.
I think that it's important, that people hear what other patients are saying about the services that they're getting from physical therapists. It's always good to hear, some of these good things, and it makes us all feel a little bit better too. So. Let's see, I like this one a lot. So, after many unsatisfactory physical therapy sessions in the past, I was truly pleased to find a therapist who was so involved in daily sessions. First time I've ever had such personal care. And here's another one. My experience at Chandler Physical Therapy has been life-changing for me. I came in with limited movement and pain in my lower back and left with no limits or pain. The exercise I have been given worked great. The entire staff is wonderful to be around and always kept me smiling. And then the last one, I have never had a PT experience quite like this. I praise all aspects of your practice. I am spreading the name of your practice to everyone. I feel like I can always use your treatments. Thank you to everyone who played a part of making a hard-working session and a success. So. Your patients definitely love you, and it shows on your website. So I think that's great, and I think that all physical therapy websites should have those testimonial pages on it because I think those are great advertisement and marketing for the profession and us. So
Absolutely. And when you're having a bad day, you go back to that and you realize why you're doing it. One of the, we as physical therapists are changing lives. We're more involved than almost any other profession, and I think that you as students should be very excited about that. You are out there to make a difference, and it's not just short term. You are educating these people for the rest of their lives, and you have a very valuable and exciting opportunity to do that. And it's get excited out there because it's really cool.
fantastic advice. We can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to chat with us and to enlighten all of us business-minded PT students out there. So hopefully we'll talk to you again very soon. And again, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely, you guys, and thank you for having me. And if you guys or anyone else who taps into this and sees it, has questions, wants to visit more, or get an idea of private practice, I'd fully welcome questions. If you guys want to come out and see how it's done out here, feel free. You're welcome anytime.
Cool.
Awesome.
We appreciate it, Eric.
Let's do a quick plug for your social media stuff. So tell us your Twitter handle.
It is at Chandler_PT.
Chandler_PT. And Eric is also on Vine, and he's doing a PT month Vine collaboration. So it's the title of that again? It's
why you chose PT. So it's for students or patients, and I just need a short little snippet video on why you chose physical therapy. What made the difference for you? And obviously from a practitioner standpoint, it's going to be very different from a patient standpoint. And I'm looking forward to putting together a little video on why people should choose PT because it's a profession of choice for me. I don't see a lot of other options out there.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to seeing that put together. All right. It's good talking to you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
All right.
You
Thanks,
too.
guys.